Correct. All right, thank you for joining the City of Kingston's Complete Streets Advisory Council. Today is May 12th, 2021. My name is Greg Krupp, the Complete Streets Liaison and organizer for our virtual meetings. Before we begin our meeting, we would like to go over a few meeting guidelines to help us navigate the system as efficiently as possible. We ask that members of the public please remain muted and off camera for the length of the meeting. As organizer, I reserve the right to mute anyone who unmutes themselves. Committee members and city staff will control their own mute button. Good practice would be to mute yourself if you're not speaking to avoid background noise and feedback. If a committee member or staff wishes to speak, they should raise their hands. The chairperson will then call on them before they speak by stating their name clearly for audio listeners. All of our meetings are recorded. Both video and written transcriptions will be made available to the public on the city's website at a later date. Although we will not have public speaking tonight, you can submit your written comments to me at gkrupp, that's GKRUPP, at kingston-ny.gov, or dropping them off at a Dropbox located outside the door of City Hall. We also encourage the public to reach out to committee chairs. If you have any audio issues, send a text message to the following number, 845-418-9634. I will repeat this number again, but be aware that phone calls will not be answered during this meeting. The number to text is 845-418-9634. As the organizer for today's meeting, I reserve the right to lock and pause the meeting to eject anyone who has behaved inappropriately. Lastly, at tonight's meeting, we have in attendance Vice Chair John Grossbolin, committee members Claudette Ford, Andy Turko-Levin, and Brian Slack, and city staff. We have myself, Greg Krupp, and Emily Flynn. Thank you for your patience during these difficult times. And on behalf of the Complete Streets Advisory Council, I wish you good health. I now turn the floor over to Vice Chair John Grossbolin.
Hello there. I guess we'll start off with no guests. I don't know if anybody is on the line or on the phone. No? Okay.
Nope.
So we'll move on. Is there any additions or corrections to the minutes from the February 10th meeting? Seeing no response, can I have a motion to accept those minutes?
I move we accept the minutes from the February meeting.
A motion by Claudette, and second?
I second that.
Second by Brian Slack. Okay. Old business. First item on the list is our e-scooter and e-bike legislation with subtopic of local recommendations. Emily, were you here to speak on that today?
Not necessarily, but I can speak to my experience with it. Want me to start there?
Sure. And we've got some comments from Bob. Did he distribute those to everybody, or did that just go to Greg and I?
I think you just sent it to the two of us. Do you want me to read them off or?
Yeah, probably on the e-bike part of it.
Okay. So before Emily, I'll just give Bob's take. He read the e-scooter and bike material, and it's his opinion that the city should not pass legislation about privately owned e-bikes or scooters and simply use the New York state law, which was passed as part of the budget bill. And these are Bob's words. I do think that the city should consider passing a bill to regulate and permit a shared e-bike, e-scooter system like the Bird proposal. The city will benefit by the revenue, and it will provide some last mile transportation options for tourists and city residents. I think certain areas of the city should be excluded by geofencing because of safety issues. Of course, that could be controversial and should be discussed with the police and public before areas are excluded. I would suggest a pilot program with a revocable permit. There should be tangible, quantifiable measures with a date for system performance evaluation set as part of the permit. I would limit the first flight to 50 scooters. Some of the measures could be injury rate, revenue generated, system provider performance, such as uptime of machines and management of machine distribution as possible measures for system provider. So those are his comments.
Okay.
Maybe we should also add that Bird Scooters has approached the city and would like to do a pilot project. And that's why it's coming up now.
Are they
This
the only?
was, this was a second contact, or was it just that initial one with the expression of interest?
Right. Just one company has expressed interest.
Okay, but they didn't come back a second time.
Well, I mean, they've been following up with me. They want our business.
Okay,
Did we issue an RFP or an RFQ, or they just solicited on their own?
They just solicited on their own. They see us as a potential market.
Yeah, and I think part of the New York state law is that e-bikes and e-scooters were prohibited in New York just in general until they passed the law establishing them as street legal. And so I think as part of that, we're going to get more solicited for, these shared systems. But as a city, we would have to pass an ordinance in order to allow that. So that's kind of, the mayor had met with Emily, myself, and some other staff members about next steps moving forward. And part of that was to come to the Complete Streets Advisory Council for a recommendation on how to craft an ordinance. And in that document that we sent over, they have draft ordinances. It's just what other stipulations we might want to put in or take out of that ordinance.
Okay.
And I reviewed that PDF from
The Cornell University.
I think I'm gonna go to the beginning of it. In fact, here's the link. I can put it in the chat. It was the one that one of our consultants shared with us. I think it came from Sierra. The e-scooter program's current state of practice in U.S. cities. And in it also is some good recommendations about what other cities have done and how kind of lessons learned. And I found this to be quite valuable when I reviewed it today.
How soon would the city want to have this program up and running? I mean, are we looking at a time deadline? Do we want to have it before peak tourist season, or are we just trying to evaluate the best program? Or both?
I think the company would like us to do it before peak tourism. I think the city can decide that timeline. And I'm including this council as the city.
Yeah, okay, so we don't, so it's not like we're up against, we want to have something in place, right? Okay, just.
I'm wondering regarding the issue, if we have thought about or should begin to think about dockless e-bikes and bike shares versus those that are landed in a specific location. For those of you who might not be aware, a dockless system is where a user can grab a bike, they can find it on their phone where they're located. And when they're done using the bike or the scooter, they can leave it anywhere. On a corner, in a park, in front of a business, anywhere. There are guidelines, but they have the ability to just drop them where they please. This is how it was used in Ithaca, and I'm not sure it was received very well by all property owners.
I would think it would have some issues. Yeah.
So that's something that really needs to be focused on. The dockless system is very adaptable. It's a great system. I mean, it's amazing that you can just grab a bike in certain places, but it should not be allowed. People should not be allowed, and the companies should not be encouraged to begin dropping them in front of private businesses, or like Bob seemed to allude to in his message, certain areas where they could be geofenced. It might be a good idea, but the dockless system can be problematic. And I'd be interested to see what the proprietor, these companies, what their approach to that is.
I agree. I'm just thinking in terms of, you know, the ability to pick up a bike anywhere or leave it anywhere, and that could be seriously problematic. I would think that in a pilot program, we might want to look at limiting it to, you can leave your bike at the following locations, whether it's one location in Kingston or whatever approved locations, and that's where you have to leave it. Get some experience with that, but I think that just the docking anywhere is not going to be really great, at least for a long time.
Emily?
I just wanted I'm just trying to be an informer with our conversations with Bird. They said that in the technology, you can very clearly establish where it's allowed to dock and where it's not.
John, has the city reached out to the different business organizations like Cuba or anyone else to bring up to their membership to see how they feel about them? Because especially if they're going to be left in front of businesses and such, like, you know, like was discussed, it would be interesting to see how they felt about it. I do think it's a good, you know, in general, it's a good thing if it's policed correctly.
Yeah, we have not yet. This is kind of like our first stop. We've only talked about it internally.
Okay.
The other concern I would have with just to be able to leave it anywhere is that obviously if it's left in a place, even though the company says they can screen against that, if it's left in a place that somebody doesn't want it, whose responsibility is it to remove it? And I am sure that the police are not going to want to enforce anything like somebody left this and so get rid of it. You know, I want it gone, or it got vandalized. Who's responsible for it? So,
Yep. So in speaking with Bird, they have a fleet manager that would be in the city, would be the point of contact for that, for retrieving the scooters that are left in an area that they're not supposed to be, or if they're damaged or vandalized. And also that's something that, you know, the ordinance has a lot of stuff in it, the draft ordinance. And one of those things is that, you know, all of that falls onto the customer service representative for the shared system. And the onus is on them. And their information should be clearly on the actual scooter itself so that the police aren't the first point of contact.
my concern with that is that it's brand new and they will promise a lot. And I know from prior experience, and then they can't do it all. You know, they really overpromise, especially in the retrieval of things from not their location. So other than that, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I thoroughly support it, but I do think that, and I haven't had a chance to read the draft ordinance or whatever, I do think we need to put some controls in place before we say, okay, this is gonna work that way. Because my sense is that Bird wants the business, and that's great, but that they're overpromising a little bit, and I don't want to be the guinea pig that's stuck with having to figure this out, you know.
Emily, you had your hand up?
I didn't have something that right this minute.
Brian?
I just have a point of clarification. It's not clear to me what we're being asked to do at this point in time as a complete.
Yeah, that was my next question.
What is the action we're looking for? And I have to be frank, you know, this is listed under old business. This is really the first time I'm beginning to focus on this issue, and I'm happy to provide some time, but I have not really considered this issue prior to this meeting.
Right, so we've talked about it in other meetings, just how the city should handle e-scooters and e-bikes in general. And in that, we've talked about the fact that we shouldn't take any action until basically we're approached in this situation for a shared system. And I guess the ask from the city, particularly the mayor, is, you know, basically language for an ordinance, what should be in it, what shouldn't be in it. It's something that, you know, we can internally look at, but we wanted to put it in front of the Complete Streets Advisory Council as well.
So if I could, those initial comments that you read from the chair, from what I heard, I agreed almost wholesale with everything Bob said in that. But I would like to review it and think about it and see if I can add anything like the dockless issue, for example. And before we deliver any final recommendation.
There was one thing that jumped out at me when I read through that, whatever it was, 130-page document. And that was that while this state law made it legal for certain types of scooters and e-bikes to be used on the road, it doesn't authorize them to be used in like city parks, rail trails, and other things that are owned by the municipality. And to me, that means that Kingston should probably take some action to approve their use on, the Kingston Point Trail, the Brickyard, anything down there that's, city owned. And that I think should probably be done ahead of anything with the rest of the regulations, because we've got, touring cyclists coming through. I encounter a lot of e-bikes like on the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail. And if they're coming into Kingston and they can't legally ride on the Empire State Trail, that doesn't make sense. Is this something, that we should maybe recommend that, Bob O'Reilly, is it Bob or is that his brother?
Patrick O'Reilly.
Patrick O'Reilly. Hey, I went to school with Bob. I wonder if this is something that we should, have him bring to the Common Council as an issue that, we've got an Empire State Trail running through here, and legally, the e-bikes aren't supposed to be on it on the city-owned pieces of it. Any thoughts on that?
Is that, I'd have to read the
No, I'm confused. I think e-bikes are allowed on the Empire State Trail.
yeah.
But they're not allowed on the city-owned properties that aren't streets.
Right, so
things like sidewalks, the rail trails, the parks, they're not allowed in those. And I think we should address that sooner rather than later, because we've got people coming through the area on the Empire State Trail.
But are they strictly prohibited under city code?
According to that document that was distributed with the, 4 different model ordinances, in the beginning sections of that, they talked about the fact that the change in the state law, removing them from the motor vehicle classification, had implications, and that they are legal for use on the public streets, but that doesn't make them legal on, properties owned by the municipalities, such as parks, multi-use trails, rail trails, etc.
It doesn't make them legal, but it doesn't make them illegal either. It's not clear.
No, they're illegal.
It's strictly prohibited.
It's under that, it's illegal unless we make it legal with a local ordinance. That's my read on it.
Okay. I'll have to look back through that. I know it did mention in a part that you cannot operate an e-bike in a multi-use path. I remember seeing
page
that.
13 is what I wrote down as a reference for that.
So are we, what are you asking, that e-bikes be allowed to be used in city parks and on city streets? I hope we're not allowing them on sidewalks.
No.
No, not the sidewalks, but like the Empire State Trail is going to use the, that bi-directional path along Greenkill Avenue, the Kingston Point Trail, and I'm not sure where the boundaries are, but going down through the Brickyard, part of that is city property, I believe. And for the e-bikes to be legally used there, we would have to have a local ordinance approving that use.
So the ordinance would have to say that they're prohibited on sidewalks or other things, but they're okay on designated trails and or pathways within city parks? Or-
Yeah, state law prohibits them on the sidewalks already. I don't know
Okay.
that we need to have redundancy there, but
I haven't read the ordinance, so I'm just trying to follow with what you're saying. My instinct is saying that, no, they obviously shouldn't be on sidewalks.
Right.
If there's a designated trail that connects to a trail, I can understand why they would be allowed there. And possibly in city parks where there are designated trails, for them. But I don't think you want them just running all over, willy-nilly. I mean, you want them to stay in a designated location.
Yeah, I guess my question, John, then is, if the state law, say it prohibits e-bikes and e-scooters on a multi-use path or a rail trail. If we pass something different, then are we inconsistent with the municipalities adjacent to us? And so will users in the city of Kingston, say if they go into the town of Ulster, or if they are taking a trip and they go down to New Paltz and they get on the rail trail in New Paltz, are they prohibited there but allowed in Kingston, and does that cause a conflict?
well, like the Walkill Valley Rail Trail is privately owned, so that wouldn't apply to that. They
Okay.
have their own regulations. You can't have the class 3s that are throttle controlled, for example. But this is a concern, at the boundaries. Obviously we can't control what's happening in the town of Ulster, and as I'm part of the O&W Municipal Coalition, and that's something that I want to bring back to them, because just getting out of Kingston on the O&W, you're in the city, then you're in the town of Ulster, then you're in the town of Hurley. And for e-bike users, they, right now it wouldn't be legal for them to use those unless they had a local ordinance approving it. So this is something I'm going back to the O&W Municipal Coalition with. And I'm just thinking for, our piece here in the city, this is something we should probably, look into sooner rather than later. And this doesn't require, any application from an outside vendor. This is just the users that are coming through.
Yep.
I don't know how to move forward with that. Should we, get Patrick involved, or should we let that be handled through, city staff to put this together? Any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, in theory, we could draft the ordinance. It would have to go through, laws and rules and whatnot.
Right.
But yeah, so that could also be part of the same effort as the shared system. So we could have two ordinances, one that would adopt basically different conditions for just privately owned and shared owned use of the e-bikes and e-scooters, and then also have an ordinance for the shared system. But I think we should take more time to read that and make sure that what we would do is appropriate for allowing e-bikes and e-scooters on, say, the Kingston Point Rail Trail and the Hudson Brickyard Trail without any negative consequences.
Yeah.
Because if the wording is multi-use path, and then we create a multi-use path on Schwank Drive, do we want the e-bikes and e-scooters on a 10-foot path on the side of the road, or do we just want them on the bigger rail trails?
Right.
Okay, any other discussion on that issue?
I would just say in closing, the Cornell Law School document regulating e-bicycles and e-scooters, issues and options, a guide for New York communities, is a very good source that I have not referenced, and I've just been reviewing during this conversation. And I think that's definitely a great place for all of us to start.
Yeah,
as we continue
that's
to
where I
muddle
picked
through
up on this issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
Move
guess-
on then.
Can I just, sorry.
All right.
I just want to, one more thing is, do we feel like this effort should be to achieve a pilot program, as Bob said, or the ordinance is just passed to allow shared systems in general and have a permit system? And then anybody who applies, the city would approve their permit or not approve their permit, and the ordinance would have basically a maximum fleet size for every firm and an aggregate size for the city that we couldn't go beyond. So would we just want to do that as an ordinance, or would we specifically be looking at doing a pilot program with BIRD?
I don't think right now, at least I don't have enough information to say which one is better. If you were to ask me to make a decision right now, I'd say go with the pilot program, because that's where you're going to find out whether or not your ordinance has everything that you want in it or should have in it. If you do a blanket ordinance right now, you're still going to be hashing out a number of things that you might find out in the pilot. That's been my experience. So, like I said, if you were to ask me right now, I'd say go for the pilot and then see how that shakes out. But whatever you guys think is best.
Emily?
In the reading I did today, I did see that there was the option that you could have BIRD or another company come in with a pilot project, and in the MOU or the contract, you could specify some of the regulations that you might try out later for an ordinance, and do not have to go through the legal, the law making quite yet. You could try it out. That PDF that I put in the chat kind of recommended against that, and did say that they recommended that municipalities do the forward thinking and come up with the regulations that they'd like to see before a company comes in. But I just want to make sure that you know that there are options.
Okay.
Yeah, so we really have two things here then. One is the share systems, and then there's the access issue that I brought up that would apply to share users or privately owned or rentals. The rentals wouldn't be included under the share system if they're going to a bike shop, say, and renting either a scooter or an e-bike.
Well, I guess I'll be downloading that document.
I'll put a link to that document in case people don't have it in the chat box.
If it's one, I thought I saw it but yeah, in the minutes or whatever.
Didn't you attach that to one of the
Yeah.
emails, Greg?
Yes, I did.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
When I sent
Yeah, I
it,
just haven't downloaded it yet, so I'll download it and take a look at it.
it covers everything. I mean,
There are two documents that he has up there. One is for New York communities regulating e-bicycles and e-scooters, issues and options. The other is for e-bike and e-scooter owners, renters, riders, and those responsible for traffic enforcement.
Okay.
And which is the one that I have not seen yet. So check it out. I just put the link in the chat box.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. All right, move on to road user education plan. And Christian's up for that, I hope. No, I don't hear you.
can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I guess there's another button on my thing here that accidentally got pushed. Well, I think that Greg did share the original PowerPoint that I used to talk about we changed the name to a traffic safety campaign when I presented it to the council. Did folks see that PowerPoint or know where to find it? I guess my question is, does anybody not know where to find it? Okay.
I'm good.
Claudette, do you have it?
I don't think so. I'm thinking and I'm like, I don't remember. I'd have to go back through. Was it emailed?
Yeah, it was attached to the email that Greg sent on yesterday.
Yesterday, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I'm kind of backed up on email, so I'll take a look at it. It's probably there. Okay.
Okay. Well, so I did a presentation to the finance committee on April 14th and requested $35,000 for a traffic safety campaign marketing consultant to essentially put together a marketing campaign plan, logo, branding, for a traffic safety campaign in general, that then the city could reuse on any sort of future campaign items that we would, or messages that we would like to get out there. But it also included some actual products specifically to assist with the adoption of the Broadway Streetscape project. And so some of the products we were looking at were radio PSAs and videos that show people how to use the bicycle infrastructure. And, all of these products would be targeted at all different users of the roadway, motorists, bicyclists, pedestrians. So I presented that to them, and the finance committee passed it through committee. There's one vote against it. And when it got, I actually thought it was going to go through. I didn't really anticipate that it wouldn't. But when it got to council, they sent it back to committee. So they didn't vote it down, but there was one alderwoman, Michelle Hirsch, who felt that we really should do an RFP for actually conduct the RFP and get actual prices before the council would commit to a number. And there was another councilman who, actually Patrick O'Reilly, who's our liaison, who was vocally against it. And we also, I spoke with Rennie Scott Childress after the meeting, and he said that some of the council members were concerned that the number I had provided, that we would continue to come back for more money. So I think there was a little bit of confusion in the original presentation that I gave. I said that $35,000 is the minimum amount that we would need for the campaign. But what I really meant, it was the minimum amount that we would want to spend. So I was really asking for the ceiling of $35,000, but I was saying we wouldn't want to spend less than $35,000. But I think that got confusing to them, and they thought that my office just might keep coming back for more and more. So my plan is to go to the council. There's a finance meeting tonight, and I will be re-presenting my PowerPoint. I have added a lot of data and information regarding the effectiveness of traffic safety campaigns and why we should do them. And I am proposing, we'll see what they say tonight, to release the RFP tomorrow and hopefully get back responses by June 1st, and then ask them to hold a special finance committee to evaluate the costs that come in with the responses that we get, and then hopefully allocate some amount of funding towards this effort. So that's where we are now. And I would certainly encourage any of you who, I can share the newer PowerPoint with you all as well. But if any of you feel strongly about this, I would encourage folks to contact their alderperson, or also have a conversation with Pat O'Reilly, since he's on our Complete Streets Advisory Council.
He lives 2 doors down the street. Yeah, I have to flag him down and say, "What's up?" Okay.
Yeah. So, so his main thing that he said in the council meeting was that, or what what I remember from watching it was he thought it should have been thought of or included in the original Broadway streetscape design or construction contract. And like, why are we thinking about this now? And so I am addressing that question tonight. I will, say that the what we're proposing is not normally part of a design or construction contract. It's not something that we have to do. And many places don't do it. They construct roads and don't do it. They just put up the signs that traffic patterns are changing ahead or construction ahead, and that's it. But we're proposing this because community members and council members expressed concern about how we're educating people about the new traffic patterns in the city of Kingston. And so we felt that we wanted to go and above and beyond what is normally expected for a design and construction project. So that's what I'm saying tonight. If anybody else has any other bites of information or ideas for what I can say, I'm happy to hear any advice.
I think you're doing it right. I mean, in what you're saying and restating the premise and making them understand. And this is bigger than just Broadway. I mean, I understand where he's coming from, but this is basically a citywide plan and program that can be scaled into other things as we move along, and with increased population and all the different traffic changes. I mean, I think it's a good idea. I'm just surprised anyway.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to grab some of your words that you just said. I had a meeting earlier with other city staff members and some other community members that are interested in this topic, and many of them suggested that we present this as more than just about Broadway streetscape, but actually about the new roundabout,
Exactly.
and the changes in the traffic lights, Broadway, the new Broadway Grand intersection. So I am going to make it a broader request tonight and try to emphasize.
I would add the Hurley Avenue bike lanes to that too, because people are using those bike lanes as another driving lane.
Yes. Okay. Thank you for. Are there any others that I'm not thinking of?
E-bikes, e-scooters. I saw a guy, I couldn't believe how fast this e-scooter accelerated this morning. The guy did not have a helmet. He passed on the right. And I was impressed and frightened for the guy.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Maybe reinforcing that Kingston is definitely becoming busier. Our population is growing. We really want to be proactive and welcoming to our new people. We're changing a lot of things. This is more than just a Broadway project. This is us being proactive with our residents, citizens, visitors, to show them that we are really concerned about safety and accidents and stuff like that.
Is there anything else on that topic?
I'll just read Bob's comments on it, just to have it
Okay.
on record. He says, the Common Council sent the safety education program back to the committee. I think the Common Council missed the point that there are significant changes to the city street system that users of the system need to learn about. The impression I got from the Common Council meeting was that some members saw the proposal as solely focused on the Broadway corridor and missed the other changes that will affect street users, specifically the elimination of traffic signals throughout the city, the Empire State Trail, the roundabout at the head of Broadway, as will the cycle track on Broadway. UCAT is also increasing and improving service in the city as part of the merger of the transit systems, and this will have an impact. I think it is important that an education program be initiated. We should remember that the basics of operating a safe system are 3 E's: engineering, education, and enforcement. The engineering is done, and now it's time for the second step. The death on the Empire State Trail should serve as an example that we need an education piece. Unquote.
Great.
Okay.
So I will be making the presentation tonight, and I can certainly let council or Complete Streets Advisory Council members know about how it goes.
Okay,
Great.
you'll do good.
Okay.
Thanks.
Other old business item that I brought up was the motorized vehicles on the trails. We know if there was ever any action taken by the city on that. Last I heard, the corporate council was looking at that.
Kristen, do you know about that?
I don't know anything about this, actually. I think this is the first time I've heard. Is this some sort of legislation that needs to be made regarding it, or?
Yeah, the city's about the only municipality around here that doesn't have an ordinance related to motor vehicles on the trails. And now that we've actually got trails in the city, it'd be good to have an ordinance controlling that. And it's typically worded something to the effect of unauthorized vehicles, which would then allow maintenance and emergency vehicles and so forth in, but give us a tool to keep the casual user from driving down the trail.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that would be a pretty simple ordinance, right? It would be something that, I mean, we could probably look at other communities that have one and
Yeah.
create something pretty
Mhm.
easily.
So
So,
somewhere along the line, I heard that it was taken to council, the lawyers to look into that, but I never heard any more of it. And I don't know who told me that the thing was taken to the lawyers.
Okay.
Is that something you can follow up on, Greg, or?
Yeah, I
Christian,
can
or-
follow up on that. Yeah, I don't know the history of it. I just know it's not in our code, and we don't have any signs at trailheads saying no unauthorized motor vehicles.
Yeah.
Do we, Emily?
well,
It might be on the big sign,
On the big sign, it might say.
listed with all the things that are
Right.
allowed on the trail.
But we don't have like a big placard
Mm-mm.
that alerts you of it. Yeah. Okay.
I think
And then
county
the other
may
thing
have
to
it.
think about is that with the new traffic law, the e-bikes and e-scooters are not within the motor vehicle category. So it wouldn't contradict that.
Right. Which kind of goes hand in hand with what I brought up earlier about we probably need an ordinance allowing that.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll follow up on that.
And we're to I guess we talked about this, didn't we? Pedestrian bicycle master plan?
Well, I have an update. I think what's new is that we released an RFP due June 4th. So this project will start to hit the busy section. We'll start to have some real action on it.
Been any response yet, or is it too new?
A couple people responded saying they're going to send in applications, and 2 emails with some questions, but they were pretty much about how to submit applications or proposals.
Good.
So far so good.
Very good. Okay. Next item is Sidewalk Improvement District. Is there any updates on that, or?
I have an update on that. The mayor did recently, like within the last month, mentioned it to me and mentioned that he would be interested in reinvigorating the proposal. So I had sent an email internally and I haven't followed up on it. I don't know if Greg, were you on that email regarding, did you respond or didn't? People might have responded. I might have not seen it.
I don't believe I responded yet.
Oh, okay.
I believe
So-
our next step is to go back again to Corporation Council, right? And revisit the timeline. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the bottom line for those of you who may or may have not been involved in the past is that we would need to propose the sidewalk improvement district or the payment, it's payment for sidewalks plan through a referendum. And so it would be ideal to do that, not this November, but I think
But
next November. So it would require, a lot of, we'll have to walk back through there's many different steps, I think, to get there to the referendum. And so we need to walk back and create a timeline of when things need to get started and when we, need to do certain things to be able to get it onto the referendum. And I think it also includes, significant public outreach and education about the proposal, because the proposal is, essentially shifting the way that sidewalks are funded and reconstructed, and and who is responsible for the sidewalks, and also proposes that taxpayers or property owners help pay for that. So it could be very controversial. So it'll be very important for the city to, educate as much as we can about the proposal so that folks can make an informed choice when they vote.
I think one thing we've got working to our advantage with a delay from, say this November to next, is that I'm seeing a lot more pedestrians out on the streets and sidewalks, and I think that increased utilization can only work to our benefit. People see how bad the walks are in some areas.
Well,
Yeah.
walkability and accessibility is very important, and it's also a very good marketing point for many cities, their walkability factor. So it's an economic boon. The overlay that Bob has talked about, I'm familiar with from other cities, and it is, yes, it's going to take some work to get it passed, but it is probably the best way to try to get it in place and upgrade and improve the sidewalk program.
Yeah, it just will take, I think we're going to have to start sort of from scratch. A lot of folks in the city don't understand how sidewalks, people don't know who's responsible for them and how you're supposed to be responsible for them. So we really would be starting from scratch and educating the public about why the sidewalks are in the condition that they're in.
Yeah.
And, how we got to where we are, and, what could be a pathway out of there. So,
and or putting in sidewalks where there haven't been any. So that's
yeah.
that's an issue too. Yeah.
Yeah. We have a lot of materials that we already developed for this, that could be turned into educational materials. But perhaps if we got the traffic safety campaign, branding and logo, we could utilize that as part of it. We could utilize those materials as a way to help get the word out about this.
And that might be a good thing to add to your presentation as far as us being, our walkability. Anyway, I know you're going to do great tonight. I have good faith.
Yeah, I might not add that one tonight because explaining the sidewalk district improvement program.
No, don't explain that just in terms of, we're trying to make, no. Do not try to explain.
If I want to open a can of worms.
Oh, no, that's not even a can of worms. That's disaster.
Yeah.
This discussion reminds me of something. I walk down Broadway from one end to the other fairly regularly, and I've noticed that some of the new sidewalks that were put in, after one winter, we've already got a spalling problem in some locations from the salt. And the whole surface is deteriorating already. And I don't know if that's a concrete specification problem or a a quality control problem, but if we've got that with one winter, what's it gonna look like in 5 or 10?
Where are you noticing that, John?
Uh, one location in particular is the mobile station. What is that, Henry Street? I think that's at the corner of Henry and Broadway. The sidewalk there is spalled, and the other one is by this. There's a service station with a food trailer in front of it.
Okay, at Franklin Street.
Is that Franklin? Yeah.
All right,
Yeah, those two spots, and there's some there's actually cracked sidewalk out there, but I don't know if that's part of the Broadway project or the 587 project at St. James.
okay.
Um,
Yeah, I'll look into it.
There's another cracked one somewhere, and I can't remember where it is offhand. But you know, if this is one winter in, that seems problematic to me.
Yep.
Anyhow, any other discussion on that? We'll move on to the next sidewalk issue, the Bluestone. I saw there was an email that Bob was talking about maybe doing a field trip. Was there any follow-up to that or time? Or I know there was a question about COVID protocols.
I did put the question to the mayor, and I don't believe I heard back about COVID protocols. I suspect that he would be okay with us holding a meeting outdoors. Has anybody else in the city held a meeting outdoors with public,
Yes.
members of the public? Okay.
Oh,
The
with
county
members of the
did.
public?
Yeah.
The county held a meeting on the UND corridor last fall with members of the public. They're part of a technical advisory committee. And we just followed protocols, and everyone was fully masked. I didn't attend because I was ill at the time, but it went smoothly.
Okay. Well, I will double check with the mayor about that. I think the point of that was for that to follow a presentation that I was going to do to the finance committee. Well, it would have been tonight, about the Bluestone sidewalks on Henry Street. And I did put in a communication to council, but it was not put on to the finance committee agenda for tonight.
No.
And so since then, I have had some more discussion with Rennie, Scott Childress, and I'll be resubmitting a communication for that to go on to the June Finance Committee. I don't know for sure it will or not. But the bottom line is that there was some sort of question about whether the council has a role. The request that I made to the council was for them to, what has come up is the Bluestone advocates have asked about preserving Bluestone on Henry Street. And so what I had put in to the council was a request to review the possibility of keeping some Bluestone on Henry Street. And the engineers have looked at this problem on a couple of blocks, and look at the plan was for our GPI, our engineering consultants, to do a presentation to the finance committee about the engineering aspects of for three choices. So concrete, restoring historic Bluestone, or laying brand new Bluestone, which we would not likely be able to source from within the county, because we actually tried to source Bluestone from within Ulster County for the Broadway streetscape project in front of UPAC. And we were not able, all of the subcontractors that our contractor tried to contact were not able to supply enough Bluestone for the project. So that was sourced from Sullivan County. So the GPI was going to present those three options and present cost estimates or the cost differences between the three options, and then have the council vote on which option would be preferable in the Henry Street project, based on the new knowledge regarding the engineering challenges and also the cost estimates. So we were going to ask them, but then there was a question of whether the council should do that or not, because they're not very involved in other aspects of design. You know, our council doesn't choose the bike racks, colors, or they don't choose anything else specifically on design. But since then, I've had some conversations with Rennie, because we have our new sidewalk code, which the council does legislate what kinds of materials we're supposed to use on sidewalks. And they do have one section that says where, and this is something that this council worked on, the Complete Streets Advisory Council, where we wrote language that says where they're outside of historic districts, where there are long stretches of bluestone, the city will try to restore historic bluestone where practicable. But like, what does, now we're realizing, how do we interpret that? And what does practicable mean?
Absolutely nothing.
It means, yeah. And practicable means like, can it be done or not? Right.
And at what price? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so really the question is, can it be funded or not? And bluestone is more expensive than concrete. So that's really what the bottom line question is. So I think that we will try and get it on to the council again. And Rennie and I also talked about the possibility of changing that code, because it doesn't really give city employees direction when you're making those choices on street design. So that's pretty much the long story about bluestone at this moment.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody has any questions or thoughts, I'd happy to hear them.
Hearing none, I guess we'll move on to the project updates. And it's Christian again, right?
Oh,
I can do some project updates.
yeah, I'm gonna say,
Okay.
hey, Greg can do some. Greg knows more.
Yeah. All right. Well, so Broadway streetscape is advancing. They're working on both sidewalk vaults, and today they were actually pouring new sidewalk on the north side of the street. Their project has been delayed a bit by the sewer project that's happening on Broadway. So their completion date now is in September, around Labor Day. So that's like the final date for the Broadway streetscape. The sidewalk should all be in well before that, but they have paving and striping to do, putting in the cycle track. So that's Broadway streetscape. I-587, if anybody's driven through there recently, they know that this week they changed over the traffic pattern to the roundabout pattern. They still have work to do in building the middle of the roundabout and the amenities for pedestrians, but the actual traffic pattern now is operating as it will. This is the final phase for the roundabout. So that's that. And that should be done mid-July for I-587. Then Broadway Grand intersection, that was awarded. We had the bid opening, and that's going to Colarusso, who's doing Midtown Linear Park for the county. They're also doing Broadway Sewer. They also were awarded Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, another project for the city. And so Broadway Grand, the first step, they're going to start their bit in June. Colarusso, before that, the actual Planet Wings building has to come down. So that's got to happen before they can mobilize there. But we're looking at like a June start date for the intersection. Then pedestrian safety action plan. I don't know, Kristen, do you know what the status is with that?
I know that it's about to be awarded. Ruth Ann in my office is working on that, and I think you said everything that I know actually. So it is about to be awarded.
And that's a total of 5, correct? 5 intersections that are being reconfigured.
Yeah, I've been a little bit on the periphery of that project, so I'd have to revisit it. But I know that it does include the intersection down on Delaware and Broadway. So I think that's a little bit exciting in front of Stewart's. So I know that one will be getting like a larger bump out and the shortening of the roadway or of the intersection. I'm trying to think of other key sections. Do you?
North Front Street at Crown,
Yep, that's another one.
Deed Stadium.
And
Oh,
then
Deed Stadium.
also Maiden Lane, where it connects with Albany Avenue. That's also getting a bump out to shorten the crosswalk for pedestrians there. And then the other one would be, the 5th one would be, there's just some pedestrian signal stuff that's happening at Mutcd and Lower Broadway.
So you all knew more than I did on that one.
But it's a small project, but
Yeah.
it'll be good. And then the next 2 I have on the list here would be Henry and Uptown transportation, if you want to update on both of those.
Yeah, I mean, Henry, I just basically gave the update. We're really, well, we're moving forward, though actually there is a major update. We did present to the public a new design for 6-foot sidewalks. Originally, the design was to do a multi-use pathway on one side of the road, but it became extremely complicated with some of the walls and also utilities on the street. And so then we moved to a 6-foot wide 6-foot wide sidewalks on both sides of the road. That is what is on Engage Kingston that we presented to the public. But it seems that just yesterday we are going to go to 5-foot sidewalks due to continued complications with snow areas for snow removal and also space for trees. And so the 6-foot sidewalks make it a little more complicated for trees. So that's a major update. And other than that, we're still having this debate about Bluestone and whether we will use it or not on portions of the project. Otherwise, we're moving forward with the design and hope within the next couple of months to submit the final construction documents to New York State DOT and hopefully get approvals by November, December, so that we're able to put it out to bid over the winter and construct it next year.
Do you recall offhand at the intersection of Fair and Henry, if they're turning that into a single lane approach, or we're designating lanes on Fair, a through lane and a left turn lane? It's twice now I've watched people in the right lane try to make a left turn onto Henry while somebody was making a left turn from the left lane. And in both cases, I couldn't believe that there wasn't an accident. It was that close. People don't, they treat it as a 2-lane road.
Treating Fair as a 2-lane,
As a
not a
2-lane
one-way.
road at that intersection. And one is treating it as if it's a 2-way street because they're in the right lane trying to make a left turn.
Right. I know exactly what you're talking about. There are multiple city streets where this occurs. It's an illegal movement.
It is, but
it's like they're passing on the right essentially, but in some cases it's on the left because Fair is a 1-way street.
Yeah. There and it's a chronic thing where people make a wide turn from Hurley Avenue onto Washington heading towards the creek.
So
instead of maintaining their lane. So,
it's a good point. I would guess it's outside the project boundary.
Yeah, so I'm still having a hard time fully understanding. Are you talking about people turning off of Fair onto Henry or on
Yes.
off of Henry onto? Yeah, so if they're coming on, so the project boundaries for Henry are the edges of Henry Street.
yeah,
So
that's, I didn't know what they were doing there, if they were bumping the
Yeah.
curbs out to narrow it down or something,
Um,
because it's
actually, I have the plans right. I have the plans right here.
Yeah.
Um,
somewhat dysfunctional the way it is.
A neck
yeah.
down would be
Um,
great.
Exactly.
I mean, what I can show you is, let's see if I can. Woo! There we go. So that's what's happening at Fair.
So
So they do have a bump out, or is that just lines that they've got
Paint.
The
paint?
lines are what they call methacrylate, and so it's
Okay.
like a red paint that they would put. It's sort of like a fake bump out.
Okay.
So they're not actually moving the curb; they're just using the methacrylate.
Well, that may do the
So that might
job
help.
then. That may do the job because it's kind of necking it down to a single lane.
yeah,
Yeah, because I didn't recall that detail from, the public hearings that we had, whatever that was, 2 or 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah, and now we're looking at since we just had this conversation yesterday about changing the width of the sidewalk to 5 feet, we are looking at what else can we do for traffic calming, and we will have the bicycle and lane signs up, and potentially the city. We wouldn't do it as part of the federal aid project, but potentially the city could do sharrows on the road afterwards. The reason we can't do it as part of the federal aid project is that the DOT has standards for sharrows that, I don't know, Brian, if you actually remember, or Greg, I think the travel lane needs to be 13 feet wide in order to paint sharrows.
Yeah, I have the white
And-
paper in my
yeah.
office. I just referenced the paper. I can't keep track of all the rules.
Yeah, but and the travel lanes on Henry are 11 feet wide. So it wouldn't
Okay.
be something that we could do through the federal aid project, but so those are things we're looking at now.
Okay.
With the detailed design.
And Uptown transportation? Improvement?
We actually had a project advisory committee meeting today on that project, and we presented what is the final preliminary design to the project advisory committee members. And then I think we'll probably wait a week or so to see if we hear from any of the project advisory committee members. If there was anything that was not shared at the meeting, but I think we're pretty close to having the typical section or the roadway design. It's very similar to what was presented at the public meeting. There were not very many changes. So I know, John, you made a lot of comments about
Me?
or somebody else who I know might be you. I don't know, on regarding bicycle lanes on Uptown on the project. But I think we're going to stick with the multi use shared path. And part of that's there, and we're also looking at putting in a roundabout at Frog Alley. And this is all on the engagekingston.com for the project, if you want to take a look. The designs are there. And so we are looking at putting a roundabout at Frog Alley and Schwank Drive. And I think that would be complicated to do that with bike lanes. So we're going to stick with the shared use path. We did, I know also there were some comments regarding the intersection with Washington Street or Washington Ave and Lucas or not Lucas, Hurley. And we will be looking at what we can do at that intersection to try and help with bicyclists who are coming from Hurley and want to get onto the shared use path. I know that was one of the concerns as well.
Yeah,
But,
for
you
sure.
know, I mean,
Which that could actually kind of serve as a segue into one of the new business items. Is there any other discussion on the Uptown transportation? Let's go a little out of order. The that Hurley Avenue link to the O&W. I don't know, did everybody see the article in the Freeman about that proposal for the Freeman building?
Mm-mm.
I don't think I saw the article, but didn't you send some emails about it?
Yeah, I did. And in a nutshell, Bobby Ryan and Scott Dutton own that building, and the Freeman has, collapsed. They're using almost nothing in that building now, and what Bobby and Scott have put together is a plan to turn that into a combination of retail space, including a bicycle shop, a quick pickup food restaurant, I believe a microbrewery and a distillery tasting room, combined with a significant amount of kind of office spaces. He described it, kind of a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday operation. And a big focus of that project is connecting to the O&W, and they actually want to name the building the O&W building, with a trail that'll take you, right from the O&W into that site, and which connects you to the Hurley Avenue bike lanes also. I talked to Bobby at length about some of their plans, and a couple of the comments I made involved widening the trail, because they proposed a 5-foot trail, which is totally inadequate for two cyclists crossing each other's paths in opposite directions, and also making it ADA compliant, because that would then match up to the ADA compliant surface that's going on the O&W. Another thing that I brought up with them, and I've mentioned this to like the Trails Advisory Council, is when these private projects are being done, they have to think about if it's going to be used as a trailhead. And Bobby said that's one of their goals, is to use that as a trailhead, which greatly improves the access to the O&W. That they need to either make the parking spaces longer, or the aisles between them wider, or a combination of both, because of the bicycle racks. When you get a standard spec parking space today, and people have bicycle racks on, there's not enough room for maneuverability. So they're most likely going to modify the parking plan on that to accommodate lots of bikes and lots of bike racks. One of the things that came up in that discussion, and with Kevin Smith from the Trails Advisory Council, is how do we get cyclists to the I got to think of my directions here, be the eastbound bike lane, and how do you get pedestrians across Hurley Avenue to the O&W access? And I think that Kevin put in a suggested project for the COVID related money to possibly look for crossing there with the with the hawks, like we have down by Quarry Street. Something to alert motorists that there are, people crossing the street there. It's going to happen whether we formalize it or not, from what I've seen of users. But that project looks like it's going to be great for transportation, and it definitely gives us better access to the O&W and connection to the Green Line. Because the county trailhead that'll be between the Super 8 and Picnic Pizza, that's only got 8 parking spaces, and it's pretty much impossible to get to on a bicycle or on foot safely. So having this access through the Freeman property there will be, great. Make it a really useful connection to the O&W. Anybody know any other things about the project, or is this all new?
This is all new.
It's all new.
Good to me.
Yeah, it's all new to me too.
John,
Okay.
trademark the name while you can.
I had that discussion with Bobby Ryan because they had already hired a lawyer to look into trademark and copyright. And it's mostly the logo that they were concerned about, which technically Carl Pizzino has copyright on that as the designer and creator of it.
Good.
But yeah, we definitely don't want that to all of a sudden become a private brand. And Bobby did say that they were looking for the blessings of the O&W Municipal Coalition to use it. So I don't think they're looking to step on any toes, but my thoughts exactly that we need to protect that so that we can keep using it for the O&W and not have it all of a sudden become the property of the O&W building, which is, what the heck is the name of that? Higginsville Station. Anybody know what Higginsville is? Andy must. You don't know Higginsville?
I've heard of it, but I can't place it.
Well, back in the old days when the viaduct was still there, pre-urban renewal, that section of Kingston along Washington Avenue and along the creek there was known as Higginsville.
Over by Sandy Road, that area?
I don't think it actually went across the creek.
It didn't.
There was a store owned by a guy named Higgins, and it wasn't formally, an official town name or anything, but it was just known as Higginsville. And when I was talking to Bobby, it turns out that his parents and my mother in particular were very familiar with that area. And it turns out our mothers actually knew each other as kids, and they picked up on that Higginsville thing. So their corporate name for that is Higginsville Station. So if anybody wondered where that name came from, that was the origins. But not that anybody remembers how it became known as Higginsville. Yeah. All right. Last item on here, for the life of me, I can't remember what it is. Mutcd Revisions. Who put that on?
Brian came back on cue.
Oh,
Yeah, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, the MUTCD, which is a manual about yay thick,
right.
is currently undergoing revision. There were 3 webinars held earlier this year, and David Stoss and I attended those. The revisions cover a very wide range of topics, essentially a routine and regular modernization of this guidance document that provides very detailed guidance on everything from the design of our streets and facilities that regulate traffic, colors, designs of signs, placement, and it is being modernized to begin to address a number of the new facilities that we've been talking about through this committee and a variety of other issues too, particularly not only just in urban areas, but also in rural and suburban areas as well. I mean, when you think about the New York metropolitan area and other large urban areas throughout the country, you have designated bus lanes and so many other different variety of detailed issues. So that's what the MUTCD update is addressing. There was an open comment period. I don't know if it's still open or if that closed. There are certainly webinars online that you can, if you're interested in learning more about the topic. Unfortunately, I don't have any details regarding all those different subject areas. The New York State Association of Metropolitan Planning Organizations did submit comments on some of the proposed revisions. Of course, my organization, UCTC, is among them. If you're interested, I can get what the summary of those comments are, but I don't know if they're necessarily relevant to our discussion here.
Okay, thanks. Last item here is announcements and communications, and I understand Emily has some for us.
They're fast, I promise. May is Bike Month, and the Bike Friendly Kingston is hosting the 3rd annual Kingston Women's Bike Festival. I'll put the link in the chat. It's quite a lot of events. I mean, it's like maybe up to 12 or 15 different webinars and presentations, and maybe even a group ride. Kristen and I are presenting about projects in the city and how to advocate for them or give your opinion on them. So you can look for Kristen and I presenting. The next free bicycle repair at the YMCA is Wednesday, May 19th from 3 to 5. You can always reach out to Tom for details. That's Tom Polk at the YMCA. And finally, what was my third thing? I think it was just that Bike Friendly Kingston could use someone to organize slow rides. And if anyone knows anyone who's interested in supporting the weekly slow rides that were happening on Thursdays in years past, you can reach out to Rose Quinn. I think those are my events and announcements.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Anything else? I guess we can look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Andy.
I'll second it.
Brian will second it. All righty. Thank you for coming. We're actually
Thank
done
you.
on time, right?
Yay.
Yay.
Hey, take care, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Bye,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.